must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us again. This is the People's Court. On our topic this morning, we're going to look at the Ruto factor in the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. My name is Miriam Ogoto, and I'm joined this morning by Jevan Karanja, all the way from Nanyuki. Jevan, a very good morning to you. Okay, so as we wait for Javan to join there, we also have Samuel Tawish, a journalist from Nairobi.
I'm here, Miriam. Thank you for having me on the show. And good afternoon good morning to our viewers and my fellow panelists. Always a pleasure being on Punchline Africa TV.
Okay, very well. Thank you so much. Tawish, a journalist from Nairobi. Samuel, a very good morning to you.
Good morning once more, Miriam. Indeed, I'm very fine, and thanks for having me on this program this morning.
Very well. So I'll just read from the Sunday Nation. Yes. All right, they've started again. All right, we apologize for that. As I was saying, we're going to look at Deputy President William Ruto's factor in the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And I will start our conversation by a story that was on the Sunday Standard yesterday. And Deputy President William Ruto on Saturday launched a broadside against the government's borrowing plan, saying the ballooning foreign debt was a threat to the nation. Speaking after a two-day retreat with coast leaders and professionals, Dr. Ruto said if elected president, he would reduce the country's debt burden. Instead of borrowing, we will enhance and expand our savings. Borrowing is threatening our nation, said Ruto after receiving an 18-point economic blueprint from coastal leaders. The DP did not say how his administration would finance the multi-billion shillings project in the blueprint. He, however, promised to sign a charter with the coast on the agreed plan. In his new political plan targeting regional blocks, Ruto said he would negotiate with people in former 8 provinces and develop plans to unshackle the nation from chains of poverty. Forget the fact that he's already the Kenya's deputy president as we speak right now, but these are plans he's having should he be re-elected as the president in Kenya in 2022. So let's just start from there. DP Ruto's factor when it comes to President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. They are in the same government, but it seems to be starting to create his own legacy before even President Uhuru Kenyatta completes his term and, cements his legacy, as Samuel Tawish started for us.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I'll say, Miriam, to begin with, that I'm not surprised that Deputy President William Ruto can make such kind of remarks against his boss, party leader, and also his boss in terms of presidency, and also in a government that he serves as a second in command. Because, again, William Ruto, for the last about 4 years or so after the re-election of the Jubilee administration in 2017, has all along but been working uncharacteristically to undermine President Uhuru Kenyatta in his administration and making it impossible for Kenyatta to realize his vision and agenda for this country. So it does not come to me as a surprise that today we have Deputy President William Ruto coming out to actually castigate President Uhuru Kenyatta and Jubilee administration for excessive borrowing. I think the bottom line here has been we need to emphasize more on prudent use of the money that has been borrowed other than concentrating so much on how much has been borrowed. I think that is very important because, again, if you borrow money and you don't put it into utilization or don't use it for the purpose it was intended for, then I think that is where we can poke holes. But if President Uhuru Kenyatta or the Kenyan government is borrowing to make sure that developmental projects actually in line with his agenda, in line with the pledges he made to the people, and that there is actually a coherent plan on how the same is going to be repaid, then I do not see a problem at all. Deputy President William Ruto should be coming out boldly and courageously to speak against this very monster and vice that has made it difficult for this country to realize its potential in terms of the developmental agenda. And this is about corruption, in which case he's been a chief priest propagating and actually shielding people who are involved in corrupt activities in the country. And I think that is what has been eating into Kenya's resources. That is what has been eating even in the monies that the Jubilee administration has been borrowing. You remember none other than any other leader, President Uhuru Kenyatta last time came out and spoke about this, that about a record 2 billion Kenya shillings is actually swindled or stolen in this country in a single day. What does it speak, Miriam? It's about a prudent use that we need actually to fix, to make sure that we have prudent use of these monies and to make sure that we deal with the corrupt elements that are otherwise not actually taking the advantage of these resources, not to provide service to the people. But for William Ruto to come out and attempting to castigate President Uhuru Kenyatta, I think it is just perfecting the art of doublespeak, which William Ruto is well known for. Because again, I remember a few years back, when the opposition was castigating the Jubilee administration for excessive borrowing, it is the same Deputy President William Ruto who was coming out boldly and defending government and saying they are actually utilizing and accounting for every single coin they are borrowing internally or externally. So what William Ruto is doing today, simply because he feels he's been actually edged out of the inner sanctum of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and I think this is self-inflicted. It is nobody has pushed him out of the Jubilee administration. He's the person who has been carving his niche by himself. He's a person who has been trying to undermine President Kenyatta. So today he feels is out of power, not literally, because again, being a deputy president and opposing the same administration, it speaks that maybe you do not read from the same script as your boss or as the administration that you are serving. So in a nutshell, I think, Miriam, this is just an act of hypocrisy from Deputy President William Ruto, and more so an attempt to try and paint President Uhuru Kenyatta in bad faith, so that he cannot be in a position to realize his vision and agenda and the legacy for this nation. But we thank the handshake, we thank President Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga for coming together with the handshake, the BBI. It has actually united this country through that unity of purpose, and we are geared towards achieving this legacy, achieving the agenda that President Uhuru Kenyatta has for this country, whether or not Deputy President William Ruto likes it, Miriam, I submit.
Okay, thank you so much. Javan Karanja, DP said instead of borrowing, we will enhance and expand our savings. Borrowing is threatening our nation, said Ruto after receiving an 18-point economic blueprint from coastal leaders. He is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. He's supposed to be doing that right now. That's what a lot of Kenyans are thinking, I'm assuming.
Exactly, Miriam. That is what he should be doing now, because now he has a mandate. We have given him the mandate to be the deputy president as Kenyans. And he doesn't know what the future holds for him. He might not be the president as he perceives or as he speculates. Therefore, he needs to work for the people who have given him the mandate now. And he needs to ensure that he works to ensure that the Jubilee agenda, the Jubilee manifesto is achieved. But what he is doing now, he is positioning himself for a seat that he doesn't know whether he'll be there in 2022, or even as the voters, whether we'll be there in 2022 to vote for him. Therefore, he needs to, first of all, to appreciate that Kenyans give him the position to be the deputy president and walk the talk now. Do the things that he is promising Kenyans now when he has the position, when he has the powers to do them now. But, you know, he is a person who is more consumed by these ambitions to be the president. I don't know why he feels that he must do these things when he becomes the president. And look at it, Miriam. In 2013, under IC, we have two deputy presidents. In the span of the Jubilee regime, we have been having two deputy presidents in one. In 2013 to 2017, deputy president was coming fire-breathing to anybody who was criticizing the Jubilee administration. He was saying that this government ni ya kusema na kutenda. But from 2018, after handshake, he started being the opposition in his own government. And I think that is so sad, because the gains that maybe he has achieved, he is watering them down to the nearby stream, to drown away. But that should not be the case. But Miriam, look at it this way. Deputy President has toured Mount Kenya region and other parts of this country for more than 100 times, opening projects, commissioning projects. Therefore, does it mean that those projects that he commissioned then are not holding any ground? And it came out, Miriam, that some of these projects that he was commissioning, especially in the Mount Kenya region, were not budgeted, were not in line with government budget. Therefore, there was no money allocated to them. And he was doing this to outsmart his boss, the Deputy President Uhuru Kenyatta. And to some extent, he achieved that because he was able to indoctrinate the people that President Uhuru Kenyatta comes from this region and he is not giving you projects. Instead, he is taking projects to Lakeside region because of this handshake. Therefore, that is one of the ways that Deputy President has been able to sabotage President Uhuru Kenyatta, especially in his own backyard. Lately, he came with the Hustler agenda. He came donating wheelbarrows. He came in Harabezi in our churches across the country, especially in Mount Kenya region, coast and western Kenya. But at the end of the day, Miriam, he is doing this so that he portray himself as a man, as a cheerful giver. And the question is, we have been having hustlers in this country way time even before independence. But what surprises me now is that the Deputy President has realized that we have downtrodden, we have less privileged Kenyans now that he seeks to be the president. What has he done? For the 30 years that he has been in active politics, in capacities of councillors, in the capacity of member of parliament, and now in the capacity of the deputy president, we need to look on that, his track record, what he has achieved for the people of Kenya when he has been in this position, before he comes promising small paradise to Kenyans, when himself has made a big paradise for himself, forgetting that we had hustlers in this country. When he was mentioned in various scandals, when he has embezzled money with his cronies from the KEMSA, and whether in KEMSA, KPLC, NSIF, and other government parastatals, where he positioned his people. Therefore, he needs to come out and share what he has now with Kenyans, the good things he is promising Kenyans. He needs to give them to President Uhuru Kenyatta so that Kenyans will enjoy the fruits of Jubilee administration now, because we don't know the government that will come in 2022. Okay. Thank you.
Very well said, Chairman Karanja. Thank you so much. Now, in his new political plan targeting regional blocs, Ruto said he would negotiate with people in former 8 provinces and develop plans to unshackle the nation from chains of poverty. And Tawish, every time the DP comes up, and now we see he's put up a team of economic strategists there led by top economist Devin D in the country, and they're trying to work on ways to revive this economy, not now, but after DP becomes president in 2022. But when they outline these wonderful things, what they want to do for Mama Mboga, for the motorbike people, and these other people they categorize as hustlers, they have never seen anything specific mentioned. Okay, fine, this is how we're going to improve the small businesses of Mama Mboga. This is what we're going to do. This is a specific thing we're going to do for the Boda guys. So how do you see this whole economic plan and what he's now saying that he wants to now meet with the people in the former provinces and develop plans to unshackle the nation from the chains of poverty? You know, that is a real concern to the DP right now. How do you see this working out for him, or how do you see him even, solving this problem?
Thank you once more, Miriam. And just before I respond to that question, Miriam, a particular question that you have asked now, let me just firm up a point on William Ruto's position regarding the excessive borrowing by government. And if you allow me to quote him, somewhere around 2018, I was just researching somewhere Miriam, while Deputy President William Ruto, I think, was launching a certain project in, it was February 23rd, 2018, and he was launching a project in Nyeri. This is what the Deputy President said. He emphasized, he justified the government borrowing and said, let me just quote him exactly. He said, there's been a lot of debate on the government's borrowing. I want to assure Kenyans that before borrowing, the government made projections on what we need to spend on and our ability to pay that loan. I can reassure Kenyans that we want to initiate developmental projects that will spark economic growth in the country. So there's so much that he did say regarding the same. But in a nutshell, I was just trying to give you a perspective of a man who thrives in double speak. Because when he was in a cordial relationship with President Uhuru Kenyatta, Deputy President William Ruto could not see any problem with the government's appetite for borrowing. And now that he appears or seems to have been sidelined from the inner sanctums of the government, he's now poking holes and trying to see where, possibly according to his imagination, President Kenyatta or the Jubilee administration has failed. But Kenyans are too wise, actually, to notice what Deputy President William Ruto is trying to advance. I think he's more of trying to get political mileage and sympathy from Kenyans through actually painting Jubilee administration in bad faith. But be that as it may, Miriam, let me now get to your point about William Ruto's his plan to revive the economy of this country. I can tell you, Miriam, and I think this is not the first time we have talked about this. Deputy President William Ruto is not one man we can rely actually to bring a paradigm shift in as far as the economy of this country is concerned. Because for one, he's been part and parcel of the problem or the economic woes that this nation has actually gone through, especially for the last about 4 or so years he's been in power. For the second time as Deputy President of the Republic. Deputy President William Ruto is a man who has overseen, of course, rampant corruption in government, because most of the people who have been implicated or indicted on corruption matters are in one way or the other aligned to him. That is why you see every time anyone is actually being maybe being investigated by the police or actually caught by the police, taken to court, or he is asked to step down, Deputy William Ruto always comes to their defense. And you ask yourself, what will be his interest to try and save the people who are being caught and asked actually to see through the transparency and accountability in as far as the resources of this country are concerned. So this is a man who has abdicated his duty in terms of actually helping President Uhuru Kenyatta to achieve his legacy, and is now riding behind such excuses that if he will be given a chance to be the president come 2022 or in the future, then he will be the answer to the problems that Kenyans face. I can assure you and every Kenyan boldly really who is watching us that Deputy William Ruto cannot provide a single answer or solution to the problems, let alone economic problems that Kenyans are facing. Because again, he's been the chief saboteur of President Kenyatta. He's been the chief saboteur of the economy of this country. How can we trust him actually to oversee or bring about a paradigm shift in as far as our economy is concerned? Look at the people he talks about as strategists to come and help him. One of them, Njuguna Ndung'u, was the former CBK boss, has disowned him and is not willing to actually offer his service to him because he feels he's a man who is living a lie. He's a man who is not actually honest or genuine in whatever kind of in his ambition to become the next president. Look at the people like David Ndii. David Ndii is an economic strategist who worked for former President Mwai Kibaki in this country. What is it that David Ndii did not achieve then that he wants to achieve today? David Ndii actually worked with CORD and NASA, you remember, in the run-up to both 2013 and 2017 general election, and they still could not make it. So now he shifted to William Ruto and thinks he can offer the same to William Ruto and entice the people of Kenya, actually lure and entice the people of Kenya to vote for William Ruto because of such well-marinated kind of policies and manifestos and economic blueprints, so that Kenyans can think maybe this is where the answer to the economic problems that they are facing are. So, but I can assure you, Miriam, that William Ruto, without fear of contradiction, cannot be a solution. And because again, he's been tested. He's been here with us. He's a deputy president, for heaven's sake. It is just like a person who says is married but says, I want to bring forth or produce more children when I get married to a second wife. Why don't you produce those kids with the wife you have at the moment? Why is it that you're waiting for the second wife or that other wife whom you are not officially married to? William Ruto is officially married to this government. They are voted in. Not only once, they are voted in twice. I think even thrice, if you are to go by the Supreme Court ruling. and Kenyans gave them the mandate to provide services and to actually fulfill the pledges they made when they are campaigning for those positions. So it cannot be possible that now he's coming out of the same kitchen and telling us that there's too much smoke inside there. I cannot actually make food. I wait until things settle down. That's why I can prepare enough food or cake for all of us to eat. It's very unfortunate of a deputy president, and this is a person who is flip-flopping. He cannot be relied, Miriam, so Kenyans should be very skeptical in giving their support to Deputy President William Ruto in his ambition to become our president.
Okay, thank you. Samuel Tawish. Now, while in at the coast over the weekend, former Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar said the coast would support Ruto's presidential ambitions on certain terms, which he has committed to meet. And Chevan, Samuel Tawish has reminded us a couple of things there. Deputy President has now been Deputy of the Republic of Kenya for what now? About 9 years, plus. And before that, he worked in subsequent government as a Deputy Prime Minister and also as a Minister of Agriculture and other dockets that he was able to hold there. And they did promise a lot of Kenyans, him as part of the Jubilee administration. They did promise not a lot of Kenyans, but Kenyans, certain things that him and President Uhuru Kenyatta said they want to do to transform the lives of Kenyans, one of them being the Big Four agenda, among other things that they promised us as Kenyans. But he's not been keen on delivering on the promise that he was part of this administration that made. He seems to have, left that promise that he made to us Kenyans, and now he's doing other things. He's busy trying to start creating his own legacy while his boss is still working to deliver on the same promises they promised us as Kenyans. So if he is not even keen on delivering right now on what he told Kenyans he would, how can the coastal people now, even and the rest of the Kenyans, bank on anything that he has to say? Because you have to judge people from their track record there, Jevan Tawish. Jevan Karanja.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miriam. And it's like you have preempted what Deputy President said some time back. I think it was in 2015 in one of our national television when he said that we work with Jubilee and ensure that we have a very concrete agenda, a manifesto or legacy that we leave behind in this term. And Kenyans will give me the presidency, not because I'm from Rift Valley or because I was born in a poor background, but because of Jubilee's scorecard. I will ride on Jubilee's scorecard to get to presidency. That's exactly what the Deputy President said. If then we are to judge the Deputy President for his performance, then he has scored exemplarily below the bar. Therefore, if we go by his words, then he has failed Kenyans because he has not delivered. In fact, he has sabotaged his boss. Therefore, the Deputy President is a man who is known to talk or to double speak, depending on the circumstances or depending on the environment where he is speaking from. He is not consistent in his words. And if, as a Deputy President, he has absconded duties, he is busy doing other business that we even didn't elect him to do. This shows that we might, if Kenyans by any chance elect him to become the president of this country, he might abscond his duty as the president and concentrate on other things that will not add value to the livelihoods of Kenyans, that will not add value on his agenda or his manifesto. A man who can abscond his duty as a deputy president can as well abscond duties as a president, or a deputy president who has failed to deliver his duties as a deputy president can also as well fail to deliver his duties as president if any chance happens, or by any luck he happens to become the president of this country. Therefore, it is high time that we Kenyans, we go to vote. Let us judge leaders on what they have done, on the pedestal of what they have delivered when they had been in various capacity, whether in private service, whether in public service, or in other spheres of life where they were given a mantle to deliver or to offer leadership. If they failed on those spheres, they can as well fail in public service. If they failed as the deputy president, as prime ministers, as cabinet secretaries, they can as well fail if they given a chance. Because Miriam, a performer is a performer, whether in whatever capacity. An MCA who can do his duties well to registrist and to ensure that they oversight well. They can as well be good MPs. They can be good governors as well. They can be good president. That is how we judge people, the consistency on who they are. Therefore, if we go by what the deputy president is saying and what the people of Coastal are expecting to achieve, these are just a pipe dream that at the end of the day, they will not get much, as they say, because, and Miriam, I also have some questions, because the deputy president is not talking directly to the communities that are in this region. He goes to certain leaders that he handpicks. I don't know which criteria he uses to pick them, but when you look at the guys who are negotiating in this Hasra narrative, they are guys of their character, their reputation is questionable. When you look at Hassan Omar, when you look at the guys who come to Mount Kenya, the likes of Rigathi Gachagua, you know what happened way back from 1992. These guys have questionable characters. Therefore, it shows that the birds of the same feathers flock together. Therefore, and I hope Deputy President can change tact if he has something to offer to hustlers, if he has something to offer to the Kenyans he call hustlers, then let him go and meet those guys. Let him come to our villages and meet the Mama Bogas, the Boda Boda guys, and talk to them directly so that they can have a public kind of a forum or a participation where they can tell him, if you happen to become the president, this is what we Mama Bogas want. This is what the Boda Bodas guys want. But you look at very keenly, you see that this Hasra narrative is also a scheme to rule Kenyans to vote for him, because at the end of the day, he does not speak to hustlers themselves directly. He goes through some brokers who are not even hustlers. If we go by the definition of the hustler and the dynastic narrative that they are creating, some of the guys that he is discussing with, we can call them dynasties per se, according to their narrative or the logic they are using to come up with this narrative. Therefore, and number two, Miriam, apart from talking to hustlers, the people he calls hustlers or the Mama Bogas, he need to give them a clear way on what he'll do to them. Because to date, I have not really understood what the deputy president has for the Boda Boda guys or the Mama Bogas, apart from telling them, hii serikali ni ya Mama Boga, hii serikali ni ya Boda Boda. What is it that these guys will benefit with if he happens to become the president? He need to come up with a clear way on how he will empower the Mama Bogas. And you cannot empower the Mama Bogas if you don't empower the farmers, if you don't have good roads. Therefore, he must also look on these things keenly so that he can come up with a clear agenda. Maybe Kenyans will understand him better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miriam, I think it is good. It's good that my friend and brother Javan Karanja has brought the issue of the track record, and it's Deputy President William Ruto who has all along been emphasizing on this one aspect of track record, that if he's going, when he vies for presidency in 2022, then Kenyans will have to judge him according to his track record, according to how the Jubilee government has performed. And I remember him on every other podium coming out and actually giving a list, an endless list of the achievements the Jubilee government has made. I mean, ranging from the roads, increased connectivity in terms of road, electricity to rural areas. He talked about free education for primary and secondary going children. He's talked about the free maternity for mothers and wives and sisters. He's talked about so many things that Jubilee has been able to actually achieve. There was even a point that William Ruto was speaking about how Jubilee has managed to unite the country. So all of a sudden, I cannot understand what has happened because William Ruto does not read or is not reading from the same script with the President Uhuru Kenyatta. All of those things have suddenly become the opposite of what he's saying today. He's now giving us reasons as to why they have not achieved. Is now giving us reasons as to why Kenyans should actually trust him to be able to take the reins of power. I remember just like Javan has said, that once you have been elected an MCA, you cannot fail to provide service or fulfill your pledges and still promise or ask people to give you a chance to become an MP when you have not fulfilled your promise even as an MCA.
And that
you have not fulfilled the pledges.
That brings me to a question, Tawish, that I wanted to pose to you. from what we've been seeing happening there, the relationship that the Deputy President has been having with his boss. I'd like to say since the handshake, but I think there were cracks even before that handshake. So perhaps the handshake only acted as a catalyst for us to see the underbelly of the frosty relationship that was already ongoing in the Jubilee House there. Would you say that the Deputy President is purposely sabotaging his boss? If yes, what does he stand to gain or lose?
Well, Miriam, I think nothing is further from the truth. And what you have said exactly is the true position of the current situation that we find ourselves, and what President Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto find themselves. Actually, these two gentlemen are in frosty relationship. I do not think that there can be any overtures or there can be any initiative to try and bring the two together. Not because of any other thing, simply because one of the gentlemen here is so much keen on securing his legacy, is so much keen on fulfilling the pledges and promises he made to Kenyans, is so much keen on uniting the people of Kenya, is so much on making sure that BBI and handshake and unity of every other Kenyan really matters. Inclusivity becomes one of his agendas as he exits office next year. But on the other hand, you have a partner who is so much keen on his ambition, raw ambition for power in 2022. And I think that is what has eaten into Deputy President William Ruto. Primarily, maybe some of the people could have been mistaken to think William Ruto would have been a viable, of course, a successor to President Uhuru Kenyatta when he exits power. But over time, I think continually Deputy President William Ruto has presented himself as a person who cannot be relied upon. He's a person who is untrusted, and such cannot be a character really to be given the mandate to be the leader of this country, Miriam. Because again, what has really disturbed President Uhuru Kenyatta and everyone really who wishes well for this administration is the mere fact that Deputy President William Ruto has decided to go on a different lane, on an opposing side, to fight his very boss. And he expects the same to be actually his springboard for 2022 general election. If it were somebody like me, Miriam, I'll be working very hard to make sure that Jubilee achieves one of the promises that it has made. I will be working very hard to make sure that the unity between myself and my boss and that of the entire country is intact. Because again, that is what I'll use as a yardstick when I'll be campaigning for the same position come next year. But again, this is a person who has decided just to go on a different trajectory altogether. Is a person who is so impatient, a person who began to campaign for 2022 immediately we finished 2017. In fact, as soon as they are sworn into office, he began concentrating on 2022. What does it speak? For the last over 5 years, the Deputy President, William Ruto, has only but been campaigning for presidency and not giving his service to the people of Kenya. Remember, the taxpayers have been paying him from all that time, ever since he was elected in 2013 as Deputy President. He was supposed to provide services. I mean, Miriam, you cannot be paid by Punchline Africa TV and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And at the same time, you expect to be promoted or to be given a higher position or rank. Miriam, it is very, very impossible. I think it is an abuse of it's an abuse of the goodwill that President Uhuru Kenyatta and the people of Kenya extended to Deputy President William Ruto by actually having him as our Deputy President. But like I've said before, Miriam, and I want to repeat, it was good that we had an opportunity to work with Deputy President William Ruto as our Deputy President for the last almost 9 years now. Because with that opportunity, we have been presented with a real William Ruto, and every Kenyan really knows who this person is and whether or not he is qualified or is actually the man to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta. German Karanja, as I finish up, has talked about the issue of the bottom-up approach. The one that William Ruto speaks like a crusade every other day. He's making it like a national anthem. That I want to uplift the lives of the Mamamboga, the border borders, the people who are working in Mjengo. You know, I interact with most of these people. And many times when they get euphoric about Deputy President William Ruto, I even ask them one pertinent question. So you are a border rider. Say, for example, along Thika Road. How has William Ruto really impacted on your life? How has he contributed for you even having the motorbike that you are riding on? I asked the Mamambogas who are selling tomatoes and onions and the greens, how has Deputy William Ruto really helped you? Has William Ruto given you 50 shillings or 1,000 shillings to go and get these tomatoes or onions from the market? Has he provided you with transport? Is he paying your rent? So what is the bottom approach that William Ruto keeps on telling us? That I want to uplift the lives of the Mamambogas and the border borders. In which sense? Unless we are living in a different country. unless we are living in a different platform. I have not seen anything tangible that is going to affect the lives of the ordinary people actually coming from the policies and initiatives that William Ruto thinks are solution-oriented for the problems of the people of Kenya. I think the solution to all the ills that continue to bedevil this country are anchored on the Big Four agenda. They are anchored on the BBI, and that is where our eyes should be. That is where our sight should be. We should all be focused on helping President Uhuru Kenyatta to achieve his legacy through the BBI and handshake. Miriam, I submit.
All right. Thank you so much, Jevan Karanja. As we conclude, President Uhuru Kenyatta, 15, 20 years from now, looking back to when he was the president of this country, how do you think he'll remember his deputy president, his deputy?
Thank you, Miriam. You know, I think for one or two reasons, they had a very good relationship in their first years. I think that is something maybe he remember, the way they crisscrossed this country, the looking for votes, you know, Miriam, and something else that Kenyans should remember. Before this coalition of President Uhuru Kenyatta, TNA and the URP, we had a very bitter relationship between the people from Mount Kenya region and the people of Rift Valley. Why? Because we came from a very dark history in our country. What transpired in this country in 2007. And the two main communities that were fighting is where President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President comes from. Therefore, when they came together and President Uhuru Kenyatta introduced the Deputy President to Mount Kenya, I think that is something that was very significant in uniting this country and take this country to the next level. And President Uhuru Kenyatta has been consistent on that. The purpose, the unity of purpose in this nation. He brought William Ruto on board in 2013, in 2017. In 2018, he realized that after bringing the deputy president on board, things are still not working well. And we need also to bring the opposition, led by former Prime Minister Odinga, on board so that we can unify this country. Therefore, President Uhuru Kenyatta has maintained a character of being consistent on what he has been doing. But on the same regard, Deputy President, they united and all that, but things started going bad when President Uhuru Kenyatta realized that some guys that he trusted, like the Deputy President and other guys, he realized that they were not in line with his agenda. They were not in line to unify this country, but instead they wanted this country to remain disintegrated. They wanted this country to remain on a tribal card in terms of politics and ethnic antagonism so that they can still bring relevance in our political scenes. That is, I think that is where they lost compass and they took different paths because these guys they are pushing different narratives. Therefore, as you have asked, Deputy President Uhuru Kenyatta, he will go to retirement, but he remember his deputy president for many good and bad reasons. That is what I say, because at the end of the day, he has a good side, because maybe in one, they know themselves better in their personal capacity that we might not know in public domain. But politically, in his second term, we remember Deputy President as a man who sabotaged his agenda, as a man who tried hard to break Jubilee Party, and a man who sponsored candidates in his backyard when he's still the deputy president to show, and it is coming to in Kiamba, where UDA and the Jubilee will face out in the Kiamba parliamentary by-election. Therefore, this shows a kind of struggle. And I think these are some of things that when President will be in his retirement, when he'll be giving counsel to other leaders, these are some of things that he'll be cautioning them. When you pick your deputy president, try to be observant, try to be keen on who they are, and don't read on what they are hiding in public domain, but look keenly on who they have been in many in years in public, in political, in their political career. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I wanted to end it there, but just on what you said, perhaps I'd like to hear Tawisha's thoughts there. Jevan is saying Deputy President will be a case study. Perhaps President Kenyatta will use him as a cautionary tale. How not to be a vice.
Miriam, you see what, and I think there's something maybe my brother Jevan Karanja missed out as to the relationship between William Ruto and President Uhuru Kenyatta. In actual sense, these two gentlemen have never had the same ideology or principle because these are people who read completely from the same script, from the different script. And William Ruto has been hiding his real identity. I think he's coming out is coming out as the real William Ruto that we used to know in 1992 when they used to be the leaders of the YK 92 and those other things that I do not want to mention now. And it speaks about really who William Ruto is. So he's a man who has been hiding, he's a man who has not been coming out openly to tell his true colors. And I think, but over time, now we Kenyans are getting to understand who William Ruto is. And in any case, Miriam, in any case, as we head to 2022, like you have said about the yardstick that William Ruto or any candidate will have used, I remember him talking about having how many studios built in every of the 47 counties. I remember him talking about laptops given to primary-going kids. I remember him talking about making sure that we have proper infrastructure. I remember him talking about water for our people, and the story of Kimorera and the road dam is there for everyone to see exactly what William Ruto and his cahoots have actually orchestrated in making sure that those dams in those places that would have otherwise helped people to get water has actually stalled, courtesy of their appetite for stealing the resources that were meant for the same. I mean, there are so many things that William Ruto spoke about when we are actually heading to 2017 general election, 2013 and 2017. I remember even in the run-up to 2017 general election, Miriam, and I was personally in Kasarani when William Ruto was actually the architect of the collapsing of all other political parties, over 13 political parties to form one Jubilee party. They called it a formidable party. They said this is a party that is going to have the face of the Republic of Kenya, that we do not want several splinter parties that are only meant to actually disintegrate and disunite the country. I do not understand what has happened all of a sudden. That today, barely, 2-3 years after the election, Deputy President William Ruto is leading actually a splinter group to form UDA and other parties that are now fighting the very Jubilee party that was part of its formation. I do not understand. So if Kenyans still want more testimony of a man who cannot be relied upon to take the mantle of power, I think William Ruto is here for everyone to see. They should not wait for any other testimony, and unless if they'll be duped or hoodwinked into voting him come 2022, so that they get more experiments, they get more testimonies, they get to know more of William Ruto, then they should wait for that opportunity to come if they're going to give him that mandate to lead them. But otherwise, I want to warn and tell Kenyans they should be vigilant, they should be cautious, and actually queue behind President Uhuru Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, if at all this country is to make the progress that it has set itself to achieve. Miriam, I submit.
Okay. Samuel Tawish, Jevon Karanja. Thank you so much. This has been the People's Court. My name is Miriam Oguta, and I shall be back the top of the hour with the latest news from across the continent of Africa. So for our viewers who have been tuning in since morning, I know we've covered so much Kenyan news and issues, but now I'll be back with the rest of news and information from across the continent of Africa at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye for now. The government of Kenya is keen on the development of social economic infrastructure to support the realization of the Big Four agenda and Vision 2030. The ambitious infrastructure projects are aimed at opening up the country for business and bolster productivity, particularly in the agricultural, manufacturing and the service industry, as this would bolster employment opportunities. Part of these critical infrastructure projects include the ongoing 27-kilometer expressway linking Nairobi's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and Nairobi's Westlands. Upon completion, the expressway will exponentially reduce travel times within Nairobi and thus help the country save man-hours, which is being lost in the traffic jams on a daily basis. The Lake Victoria Port Modernization Project to increase cargo handling capacity of the port and to increase Kenya's bilateral and multilateral trading within the region. The expansion of healthcare facilities to facilitate fruition of the country's universal healthcare coverage under the Big Four agenda. By speeding up movement of people and goods, the government is aiming to promote trading through reduction of travel times and costs.